Alan Kay, one of the great American computer scientists and designers, gave us the Apple Media Lab back in the day, gave us object programming, gave us the initial concepts for what have become the notebooks and laptops in our lives. So small contributor. He always said that if you want to predict the future, invent it. But our version of this for AI is actually, if you want to actually then invent the future, start.
Hello, and welcome to Generation AI, the podcast where we make AI clear and simple through the lens of higher education. Today, we have an exciting episode fresh from ASU GSV. JC and I are joined by Lev Gonick, CIO of Arizona State University, the largest public university in the US. In this conversation, we dig into ASU's orchestrated AI agent systems that's transforming campus operations, their strategy for moving from fragmented technology or Frankenstein technology to integrated AI solutions, and how they're creating a digital workforce alongside human staff. Lev shares how ASU is already using AI to fix common pain points like parking and financial aid, their plans for AI-powered teaching tools launching this August, and their practical approach to helping staff adopt these changes. If you want to see the future of AI in higher education happening right now, this episode shows you exactly what's possible when a university decides to lead rather than follow. Let's get into it.
Hi, welcome to Generation AI. I'm JC Bonilla. We're joined by Lev Gonick, CIO of ASU. And thank you for the time here.
Great.
I'd like to start with a high-level conversation around how do you see AI coming in the technology footprint of universities. So let me generalize. Most of the universities that we see, they look like technology Frankensteins. CRM there, Excel over here, and tools and whatnot. And then here comes AI. From your point of view, is AI a tool that joins these incredible Frankensteins? Is a unifier or just a strategic play that all schools need to have? So can we start a conversation there?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. Good to see you again. Thanks for being at ASU GSV as well. So at ASU, the way we're approaching AI is, to answer your question, and both. It is definitely a set of tools that are likely for the near term to be yet more appendages to the Frankenstein. There's plenty of evidence that is going on right now. Very natural. It's also, at the same time, there's plenty of evidence, certainly reflected in our broad architectures, for realizing a more integrated and unified approach that hopefully will, over time, allow for a better experience for our students, our faculty, and our staff by reducing the complexity of the Frankenstein model. And looking forward to chatting with you about that piece of it. But just to acknowledge that where we're at right now in the moment is not binary choice of saying you're either for Frankenstein or you're going to wait, and you might be waiting for a long time if you're waiting for the perfect unified integrated we're going to change the world version of things. And so at ASU we're very pragmatic, but we keep our eye on the big picture.
How long do you think that transition will take?
Well, I mean, one answer, not to be too snide about it, is it could be forever. Higher education is an industry with a very, very wide set of capabilities and maturities and orientation to change and change management. And I think one of the things that a university like ASU represents to the marketplace is the evidence of what happens when you have, a growth mindset, what happens when you are thinking less about scarcity as sort of the reality of what you have to manage in the technology world, and more about opportunity to take a look at abundance. We represent agile and flexible institutions at scale, but we're not the norm. We're definitely an outlier, and by design, we're an outlier of what the new American university can actually look like. As a result, the truth is, to answer your question very clearly, we're going to have a lot of that Frankenstein reality probably for the next generation or two, because in fact today that legacy environment is a result of a generation or two of just the old stuff that is there. So it's not going away. And again, I think what we want to do right now is both model what the future could look like and start putting it into practice at places like ASU to give people a proof point for what the art of the possible is. We like to say, we like to focus on the future today.
When we look at ASU, and this is the biggest compliment I could give you, it literally looks like you have the most advanced deployment of AI. It's very seldom that an academic institution hits up experts and gives us your AI journey as a full publication. So,
By the way, second one, right? The first version was 60 stories. Now these are 40 stories, including a fabulous collection of stories about the way our students are already starting to not just play with it, but actually leverage it. And, that's actually when you're on the path to winning.
So is that a generalizable story? Because to the Frankensteins, right? So trying to figure out, and maybe the most the advanced version has an AI committee, but you are in a totally different playbook. What are the 3-4 things that, how do you generalize that? How do we replicate ASU's?
Well, I mean, again, I mentioned a little bit about mindset and how important growth mindset is and how important it is to be thinking about abundance as not something you necessarily sort of think of pragmatically, but it really is a mindset. It is like when you walk into work every day, the opportunity here is to think about how to, invent the future. So how do you do that? And, Alan Kay, one of the great American computer scientists and designers, gave us the Apple Media Lab back in the day, gave us object programming, gave us the initial concepts for what have become the notebooks and laptops in our lives. So small contributor. He always said that, if you want to predict the future, invent it. But our version of this for AI is actually, if you want to actually then invent the future, start. And that's the answer to the question. You're right. A lot of the university world is caught up without, I think, really understanding kind of what kind of tectonic shift AI represents to not just how we teach, but ultimately what we teach. And I don't think enough universities are leaning in. I think a lot of us sort of have an instinct, which is it's kind of what I call the China syndrome. The Chinese often think that they don't worry too much about the advancing armies because whoever tries to invade China, they will absolutely absorb the invading armies. That's how the Chinese see themselves as the Middle Kingdom. At higher education, we have our own version of that, which we don't really have to worry about the technology. Ultimately, we're going to incrementally find a way to have we will shape the technology, or we'll simply end up buying it when when it hits a price point that we can afford. AI is a very different technology. I think this was your point at the beginning, Jace, that in fact, this is transformational in the way technology will ultimately position, again, not only the technique that we use for how we teach or how we research or how we run the workforce of the future. It will actually redefine what we teach and what we research, and ultimately what it means to actually have a workforce that is both human and digital. Those are transformational efforts, and too many universities right now, that debate is being left to sort of academic debate and conversation, and not enough experimenting and testing. And at ASU, these are contested concepts, but we're actually trying to see what happens in the real world and getting feedback from our students and from our faculty in real time, trying to remain true to, important concepts like principled innovation, like we're not just innovating for the sake of innovating, trying to really move, student success forward. And, it's not like it's a linear path. The reality is, and, you guys know this as technologists, this is a nonlinear reality. That's how we deal with it. And the only way to think about this is to do it the way, at least historically, we've done agile software development. You've got to sprint and then you've got to iterate. Now, in the AI world, maybe sprinting is something of the past, because if we have a lot of agentic AI underway, then the traditional way we've run sprints probably as a methodology probably have to be rethought too. But, just as a kind of concept for how universities do or don't think agilely or adaptively, I think ASU is a model for what you can do.
Yeah. So last year, Lev, we talked about how you guys are actually using AI, and you're one of the first institutions to partner with OpenAI to actually bring that in. You're seeing that model now being adopted by a lot of other schools. And last year you mentioned that you're actually helping them with their business model, OpenAI, and how to actually work and sell to universities and work with that. So that's you've been always open to kind of working with the private sector. Obviously, ASU GSV is kind of an example of that. So when you're looking at right now, how what the next phase of that looks like for ASU, you've been mentioning agents a couple of times right now, and last year it was all about how AI is being used in the classroom, the generative nature of it, doing better content and doing better kind of Socratic learning back and forth and conversations. We're transitioning, right? These models are getting so complex, so powerful that they now can reason. And now we're entering into that agentic world where AI is actually interacting and becoming part of our world and doing things. And where are you? Where's your journey at ASU with agents? And maybe you want to talk about just define agents in academia or in education overall, and we can dive a little bit deeper into that world.
Sure. So let me just frame it this way. The generative AI, revolution that we talked about 12 months ago, and even the multimodal kinds of experiences that are kind of reaching, again, not yet there, but reaching the mainstream along the way. I think when history is written, the first 2.5 years of this journey that we've been on since basically November of 22, it'll all actually feel like prehistory. I don't think we're actually going to end up thinking much about it. I mean, these turn out to be fundamentally important building blocks from a technology perspective. That is to say, beginning to extract value out of these large language models, the first pieces of it. Naturally, we're essentially based on querying the models, and there's no lack of creativity and imagination, in the ways in which those can be both done for party favors as well as done for serious research. And the same is now being experienced when it comes to voice and video experiences. And some of those voice and video experiences, I think, will actually start creating economic value. I think the generative AI ones will quickly recede. That is to say, the ones that are only based on basically language, basically interacting with a single agent through type, those are not likely to have an economic logic that works inside higher education. The voice ones, as they get applied to curriculum and as they get applied to research discovery, basically having a lab support agent, you can not only ingest massive amounts of data, but you can also be doing, real-time graphing and what-if scenarios in ways that are, I think, pretty exciting to see. And those may actually have economic value for basically sustainability in the marketplace. Both are going to continue to exist. And now I think you are seeing the emergence. I think it's probably not worth stating this with too much hyperbole. I think the agentic world is emergent and not taking over yet. I think a year from now, we'll actually be able to better understand the various use cases in higher education where that makes logical sense. And it'll also be, I think, based on our work at ASU, very, very early on in the idea of where you could create economic value out of being either an orchestrator of the agentic world, by which, again, I mean not just interacting with one agent the way you would with generative, but actually the fact that we have at ASU, historically, we've had a agent, we used to call it a bot, an agent that is working on syllabus creation, where we have a series of bots that work on assessment. We have a bot that works on skills. We have a bot that works on career opportunities, and on and on. And what the agentic world is actually creating workflows where at least the hypothesis is that the agents can actually work with each other, rather than only you as the human interacting with one or another, or trying to create sort of an AGI approach, which is to say, a super set of insights that a single machine can take. Not only are they more efficient to create these smaller agents working, there's also, I think, an important and therefore more efficient that way. I think there's also an opportunity to realize that, at least in an industry like ours, it's important to create an agentic architecture which allows different institutions to snap in their various, whether it's syllabi, whether it's content, whether or not it's assessment, whether or not it's skills development, because there isn't one size that fits all in our industry, in higher education. And the truth is, product teams have tried to create like the ultimate experience, almost never win that battle, because everyone in university world thinks of themselves as a special snowflake. And that's not going away anytime soon, but there is an opportunity here. And at ASU, we actually have, again, the scenario that I shared with you of basically now a dozen agents that we have built for purpose now actually being orchestrated by an orchestration agent. And just chatting with our friends across the way here from one of the really big technology companies, talking about how do we make sure that we actually have a centurion agent that makes sure that in fact no harm is being done as the agents are being orchestrated, that actually things that we want to protect, privacy, things that we want to protect, like security. You can have a security agent in the middle of it, but as the agents are working with one another, it's hard to create a generalizable workflow that will protect privacy and agents and privacy and security and many other important things like protecting where IP goes. And so we're now talking about the importance of actually having a police or a centurion that manages the orchestrator and
Keeps the orchestrator on check.
and keeps all of that moving. So that's the level at which ASU is not only conceptually dealing with this moment, but we will have in August when we come back to school, we actually have a series of agentic AI experiences in the back office of the university now, like in parking. We have now agents working with each other, not just to help deal with one of the biggest pain points at a university, which is people love to hate parking. So that's one of the examples that's well underway. The bigger picture, the one for teaching and learning, again, come August, we're going to have it in play with a number of our partners in the provost office and our online team.
So, Lev, when we think about kind of on the student experience side, I think that's one of the areas that we're not experts on the academic side. We teach, JC and I, we've been in the classroom, but we don't think a lot about the pedagogy or the academic side. Well, we serve a lot of those those folks, but we think about the student ultimately, right? And we think about that customer or that student and what's their experience. We think about it from the acquisition side, think about like the marketing side, like where, how they're interacting with schools. Think about it on the success side, and it's actually the retention. And we look at it from a business perspective as well. And we're like, there's a lot of big pieces missing here, around like how we're treating and how we are onboarding and how we're recruiting. And so you guys obviously have done a lot of work around that, right? So from an experience perspective, can you talk about a couple of things that you guys are doing today that AI is playing a huge role in that student experience?
Yeah, I mean, and let me just sort of share that, just picking up from the last thread, that one of the agents that we are building and actually have begun to deploy is the pedagogy agent, because it turns out it's art and science. So it depends, depending on what your objectives are for what you want to actually have your students walk away with. And it depends on whether you want Socratic method or case method or didactic. And as an instructor, again, you want to not only use a sort of generic prompt that says, I'm going to teach a case method or now we're talking about it in the context of a persona-based experience, which again, agents are pretty good at generating. You don't want to have a generalized prompt. You actually want to create essentially expertise that allows from end to end an experience to be informed by case method that allows prompts for students to respond to when it comes to preparing for the case, running the case, the reflections after the case, which won't require you to actually write the whole curriculum all over again, because actually at the front end of the funnel, you're saying this is the kind of pedagogy that I want to employ, and then leveraging the agents to help you as the instructor as you design your curriculum. At ASU, again, we're building these sort of, and again, I see these as really, really important activities that help the student experience along the way. There are some very important sort of, again, mid-range activities. Again, I started with pain point parking. We might laugh at a little bit, but it is a major Tylenol 3 headache for every university in the country. Doesn't matter how big or small you are. Another big problem is financial aid. which is a huge challenge. Every family actually has to respond to a FAFSA, and every family that then needs financial aid has to navigate that experience. And so at ASU, we've been successfully developing agent-based, again, agentic, not just single agent, but agentic-based infrastructure that supports a better experience for our human agents to help facilitate the family journey through it. And hopefully in the next relatively short period of time, we'll be able to demonstrate students being able to actually support better experiences of their own financial aid journey along the way. Certainly lots and lots of examples in the delivery of instruction. So again, we were referencing the AI journal, the AI journey that we have, the volume 2, which again, folks can go to ai.asu.edu and see all the stories that are out there. These are all, like, to be responsive to your question, these are all student-facing experiences, whether those are in the instructional delivery, whether it's in the scaffolding, basically the social emotional part of the learning journey, whether it is in the preparation that you do as you prepare for being a student as a first-year student along the journey, or whether you're actually beginning to use it and leverage it for the research activity that you want to be doing, or you're an entrepreneur at ASU and you want to start an AI company as part of your journey. What can we do? And again, these are examples where AI is being used every day, not to only address the how, again, to go back to one of my central themes here, not just how things are actually going to be different with AI, but what we can do with AI that are actually never before seen outcomes.
Yeah.
So look, agents are amazing in terms of what they're going to be able to do, kind of automating workflows. And when you think about it, actually taking in full roles and personalities and job descriptions. So in some cases, we talk about a lot of Jensen Huang and how he's talking about the IT. IT is going to be the new HR department for organizations. And when you think about these agents, they're taking the jobs, and you have to onboard them and you have to orchestrate them. When you think about this digital workforce or agentic digital workforce, at Element, we're actually building some of these things for higher education, like a recruiter. We're building kind of student success coaches on top of the platform, and they're interacting with each other. But we're seeing that there's a gap there, and folks, they don't quite understand it and don't think.
Yeah. So here's sort of, there is a myth out there that started with a simple framing that you don't have to worry about losing your job to AI. You have to actually be worried about somebody who knows AI. Excuse me, that's BS. The reality is, again, we can debate the timeline, but over a relatively short horizon, as you were framing the question, there has to be a re-architecting of the way we do work. And it turns out at universities, like a lot of organizations, but at universities or healthcare, governments, public sector sort of focused organizations, we humans don't really want to confront that challenge. There's a lot of reasons, but it turns out it's a survival instinct, and so we know in our own environment, which I've checked in with CIOs across the land in different sectors. I spoke to the CIO of one of the top, let's say, 2 companies in the world in this space. And she told me straight up, like, the biggest challenge is the human side of the issue, not not what the CEO is saying about that kind of a reality that you just described, that that we attribute to Jensen in terms of the way in which we have to be thinking about building workforces that are hybrid human and machine along the way, and having a digital workforce has got to be part of the way we think of things going forward. The challenge, again, for us is the transition between the current environment, as we inherit it today, and that future state, and understanding where we can bring. It's a fundamental insight. Where can we bring the biggest value for the least amount of investment that actually will disrupt the fewest number of players that are out there? Because actually complexity goes up in the change management when you pull one of those 3 levers that is out there. And so, that is the kind of thing, again, we're working on at ASU. The good news about ASU, separate from most of our peers, is because we're still in a growth mode. Actually, we're in a radical growth mode. That's core to our essence. And as a result, scale affords us a way to have a conversation with our human employees that are there to say, right, it's really hard to scale at ASU when we actually don't have the resources to add more headcount.
Right. Humans don't scale.
Not especially at the level what ASU, where ASU is growing, which is still double percentage growth online. We're certainly now involved in global education content development and distribution. So we have to find a way to approach this workforce issue in an intelligent way, and it needn't start with the idea that you're going to lose your job tomorrow. But the jobs of the future are, you as an employee have to be thinking about what path you want to proceed with upskilling or reskilling. And our job as the university leadership team is to help with that pathway. And I think we've got evidence. We have something called the Stretch program inside our organization, in which we know there are any number of job categories. Tier 1 SOC for the Security Operations Center. The machines are going to take care of Tier 1. The call center infrastructure, the machines are going to be able to handle a big part of that Tier 1. So helping those folks now understand that they have skills that can actually support a pathway, rather than simply saying, all you can imagine now is being driven off a cliff. That's not our job. It's not our moral purpose to do that either. And unlike the private sector, which has to be driven by a different calculation, we have an opportunity to help our employees be part of the learning journey.
So prediction, Lev, next 6 months, 2 weeks to 6 months, where do you see our sector, higher education, being impacted the most?
Well, I mean, we haven't talked at all about politics in this half hour, but I have to say that we can't run.
Literally, we try to avoid it.
We can't run away from it either. And the truth is, it is obviously going to be important for us to understand what's going on in the landscape. But we at ASU see that as opportunity, and so it's our ability to be adaptive to that opportunity. And I think the conversation we're having today around AI is one set of tools where, together with the market, we can better understand sort of what the future state might look like. Hopefully it's more than a 2-week horizon. Hopefully we can plan with a little bit more predictability as to what the rules are going forward, whatever they are. And then again, as one institution, but hopefully with others in our ecosystem, we can actually agilely engage in meaningful leveraging of the technology to help us not only, the language we use at ASU is not only survive a disruption, again, this one could be a combination of technology and politics, but also to actually thrive, and we call that being anti-fragile. Some organizations are built to be anti-fragile. We think of ASU as one of those prototypes.
Can we call it Doge-proofing your institution?
No comment.
Lev, thank you so much. We appreciate your time today.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Lev.
Generation AI is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you're going to like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing weekly, and we've got a wide range of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed leaders and professionals like you find their next big idea. They feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts, like Jamie Hunt, Seth Odell, Jenny Lee Fowler, Brian Gross, and many of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform that's helping institutions all over the country create meaningful, personalized, and engaging connections with their prospects and students. Learn more at element451.com.